Good evening. At this time, I'd like to call the City of Twinsburg Caucus meeting for January 24th, 2023 to order. The time is 7 p.m. Shannon, please call the roll.
Mr. Barr?
Yeah, here.
Mrs. Walker?
Present.
Mr. Deeds?
Here.
Mr. Fury?
Here.
Mr. Bellin? Mr. Post?
Here.
Mrs. Labby?
Here.
Okay, Shannon, do we have any presentations?
There are none.
All right, items for discussion. We have the city's building commissioner, Keith Folks, here tonight to talk about fences. Mr. Folks? Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening. Good, thank you.
Good, good.
How's everybody?
Well, thank you.
Good. Yes, as the chairman said, I have legislation I'm trying to bring forward to clean up our section of the zoning code. It's a very small section related to fencing. So what the code states, and this is in 116401, number 8, it says all chain link fencing shall be vinyl clad, which is good. And then number 10, which refers to the vinyl, says vinyl shall be black, dark brown, dark green in color. Wood fences shall be white, neutral, earth tones. Both sides must be the same color. So historically, I think this interpretation of this code was that if you had a chain link fence, it needed to be those colors. And traditionally, we were getting white vinyl fencing all over, which is standard and typical. If you get a different color vinyl fence, or I should say simulated wood vinyl fence, it would be very expensive to get a black wood vinyl fence or wood simulated. So recently, we did have a complaint based on this situation. Somebody put up a white vinyl fence. There was a complaint. They challenged the language, so we deferred to our law department, who provided us some edification, and then we realized that this was being enforced improperly, in that if it's a vinyl fence, it has to be of those three colors, the dark green, dark brown, or black. So how many people would you think would want those colored vinyl fences in their property? So we already had one variance come before the Board of Zoning Appeals. My hope is to get this done timely now so that we can avoid a rush into the BZA for every fence that goes up, whether it's around a pool or a property that's white picket fence. So, if you have any questions?
Sounds pretty reasonable. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Folks? I think it's good work.
Can I just add a quick comment to that?
Yes, sir.
Because I was present at that BZA meeting, and I believe, as Mr. Folks mentioned, those vinyl coated chain link fences are to be black, brown, or green because they go away. You don't see them, and it's so they mix in with the landscaping around them, and you really don't notice those colors. I agree with you. I don't think they're meant to be for the slats or pickets on a fence. They're meant to be, that's really meant to be for chain link.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think what we're seeing today too, there's so many products out there. It's amazing the types of products that they have that are wood simulated or other colors that are relatively aesthetic, that may match a house or contrast to complement it. So in order to accept those types of colors, in fact, I think the last fence that came from BZA, the fence color was a sandy colored fence, which would have probably needed a variance in anyway. So I think we want to change the language so we'll include any of those colors that may be complementary, but make sure that the vinyl clad chain link fencing stays the same.
Sounds good. Anything else to add? Sounds great, Mr. Folks. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any further items for discussion this evening?
We'll be voting on that.
Not this evening. We're working on legislation, but yes, I think at some point there will be a change that Keith will be bringing forward for us to vote on. Yes. Any other discussion on that? All right. Audience participation, Shannon. Do we have any?
We do. We have Bob Thews.
Okay. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Bob Thews, 2229 Demi Drive,
in the Meadowood complex. We kind of started a discussion last caucus meeting about Glen Eagles Golf Course Pavilion. Okay, and as I understand it, you related after my discussion that you were having a meeting with them to decide some things and whether that would be available. The reason I'm asking is because my group is scheduling their dinner events that, you know, if you have any size of a group in a golf league, you've got to get it scheduled early or you don't get the times you need. So my question is, has that been resolved? Is the pavilion, will we be able to bring our own food into the pavilion, okay, from that standpoint, versus having to get burnt with food? And that's the question I have.
We did have that meeting, and it was a very successful meeting, I'd call it. And we are looking at the whole contract, though that wasn't the only item on the
Right.
agenda for that meeting. And so again, I think it was successful, it was positive, and I hope to be able to come out with the entirety of what the meeting and the outcome of the meeting. I think it'll be good for both sides. It'll be a win-win for everybody.
So, okay.
I believe.
Okay.
Okay.
But
And it seems to be that direction now.
okay. Just from the standpoint, is there any timing on that because of the idea, to book, to book the league, which is 40 slots, they got to book it in the beginning of the year. Is there going to be an answer by the end of the month, or is there going to be an answer by mid-February?
By the end of January, probably not, but I would say mid-February.
Okay, I'll see if they can see what they want to do from there.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
That's all we
Anyone
have.
else this evening, Shannon?
That's all we have this evening.
All right, so that moves us on to pending legislation. I'd like to start us out with Ordinance 03-2023. This ordinance this evening is to enter into an agreement with the city prosecutor, Mr. Frank Benny. Mr. DeZana, is there anything you'd like to elaborate on that particular agreement this evening?
No, sir.
Okay. We will move on. Does anybody have any questions about 03? All right. Ordinance 04-2023 is an ordinance to enter into our annual MOU, which is a Memorandum of Understanding with Tinkers Creek Watershed. This is a partnership between the city and Watershed to meet the General National Pollution Discharge and Elimination System requirements, also known as NPDES. This is pretty boilerplate stuff that we have done in the past. Any discussion on 04? All right, hearing none, I'm moving on to 05-2023. This is an ordinance to repeal Chapter 155 of the Code regarding the Glen Eagles Advisory Board. Council has had the opportunity to discuss, has had discussions regarding this committee, and it was determined that this board should be disbanded at the end of the current board members' terms, which are slated to expire March 31st of 2024. Charter 7.01 authorizes council to abolish certain boards that are created by council with a vote of 5 or more members. Since the board was established by an ordinance, it can also be repealed by an ordinance. This will be the first reading of this evening. Any discussion, comments, or questions on 05?
I have one comment,
Mr. DeZana?
Mr. President. Section 4 lists January 1 of next year as the effective date. I do believe that it should be March 31st of next year as the effective date, because the intent is to run the board until the end of the terms.
Correct.
I can make that amendment and have it prepared for the second reading.
That would be appreciated if we could revise that. Again, I believe the intention, as you stated, was to have it run concurrent with the cessation of those terms.
That's correct. Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on 05? All right. Resolution 06-2023 is a resolution to honor Black History Month in the city of Twinsburg in February. Anyone have anything they'd like to add regarding Resolution 06-2023? Okay. That moves us along to Ordinance 07-2023. This is an ordinance to authorize the purchase of a 2023 Ford Expedition to be used by the fire department. This will be replacing a 2007 Jeep Cherokee that has over 108,000 miles. This was approved through the Capital Improvements Board and it is included in the 2023 temporary appropriations. The agreement is with Montrose Ford through the state bid process with a purchase price of $54,208.30. Any conversation, discussion, or questions regarding 07-2023? All right. Moving along, ordinance 08-2023 is an ordinance to enter into an agreement with Zone Co. to facilitate a comprehensive update to the city's planning and zoning code. City Council requested that the city look into doing a complete update of the planning and zoning code. Administration did a request for proposals, of which 6 were submitted in the fourth quarter of last year. There was a selection committee who narrowed that number down and interviewed 3 candidates. Ultimately, Zone Co. was selected because they were the most comprehensive. They included the most extensive community outreach, and then they were truly the best candidate for the job. The amount of the contract is for $158,905. Council has been asked to read this 3 times, but place the ordinance on an emergency for its 3rd and final reading. The 3rd reading is slated to be February 28th. Any discussion on Zone Co? We'll be reading that this evening.
So, Mayor Scafidi,
Yes.
you and the Economic Development Coordinator feel that it's okay to wait that long to get this passed, or do you want to put it, or do you want to actually go through with the emergency and get it going?
Yeah, well, we wanted to read it more than one time, and I know that Councilman Bellin wanted to be here for the vote, number one.
He asked, I contacted him about that today. He sent me a text and said he'd either have it, if it's needed to go faster, he would like to get it processed. Again, I just want to say, if that was the reason we're holding off, he's okay with moving forward, and we give him credit for introducing this.
Right.
But, you know,
Yeah, it was discussed, and I even said, if we want to read it one time, we'll read it, and then we'll pass it on the second reading
Fine.
as an emergency.
Not a problem.
And so we may do that, but it looks like right now we may go 3 readings, that they're okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Between,
believe
Rebecca and, yeah.
we discussed that at the last meeting. One of the comments I made to Mrs. Stiegler was in the interest of transparency. I
And
think
she
you're
would have
alluding
been,
to
she
that.
planned to be here tonight, but she
Yeah.
had something come up.
Sure.
That we tried to read this as much as possible to give opportunity for comment and discussion. So,
I agree.
okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other discussion on the ordinance involving Zone Co? All right. Ordinance 09-2023 is an ordinance to accept a grant from ODNR for park improvements and enter into a contract for the same. The project is at Glen Chamberlain Park, includes replacement of playground equipment, demolition and replacement of the bathrooms, and provision of ADA access to the amphitheater. The estimated total cost of the project is $815,000. The grant amount will be $331,240, and the city would be responsible for the balance of $483,760. Project's estimated completion would be summer of 2024. We're asking council to try and pass this on an emergency this evening so that we waive the 30-day waiting period to allow the project to move forward through the process, including final design and planning commission meetings as required. Any conversation or questions or discussion on 09?
The only question I had is, when I was reading through it, in the one section it was 200,000, it was broken up 100,000/100,000. I don't have it in front of me, but
I can click.
I just didn't know what the difference was that for that. Were you going to bring that out, or?
Yeah, I was going to talk a little bit on the financial end. You read the 815,000, that's an estimate still. Parks and Rec is getting prices in every day, so I do know that where I had the 100,000, I'll explain that the first 100,000 is a grant, and the other 100,000 is what we would have to match. It was roughly a 50-50 grant the way it was proposed, but again, those estimates were things that were put together associated with the grant application. We know that costs are not matching those. So that 100 was grant and 100 was ours, but we know now that we've got a revised quote, we're about 115 for that station. So with us saying that the project's cost is $815,000, it probably will be slightly, when we get all the final designs, might be slightly different than that. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that, and that would have to be added to the budget that you guys are putting together here, final budgets.
Does anyone have additional questions? Do we have Amy here this evening?
You're saying the 415 will be added to the budget?
Be added in 2024.
in 2024?
The 2024, I believe playground was already in, the 100,000 was already in the budget. We're a little bit short based on the new quotes. And that's a prefab structure, so that's an ordered structure. The restroom, I believe you used that's in the budget for 2024, you used the 275 as the budgeting number? Sorry, 23. I'm working in multiple years, I always
The
do.
playgrounds and the restrooms were the pieces of the project we were going to do in 23, and then in 24, we were going to do the ADA access.
Okay.
We're going to go ahead and do it, I'm going to add to the budget this year, and we're going to get it all in the budget for 2023, because when we looked at the timing, this grant has to be completed by mid-year 2024, so we need to get the money in the budget this year so that we can accomplish that.
Thank you.
So yeah, you still have to add a good chunk of money to the budget.
Mr. Vazana, you something to add?
Yeah, I'd like, excuse me, tying into that, I think it's important to note that the legislation before you is the acceptance of the grant entering into the contract. The items that we're discussing right now will be bid out, and staff will return to council with the specific numbers, or at least the estimates built on those bids, and ask you to authorize those specific contracts. So this is just step one of this grant acceptance process. Once we get this authorization, we can then move forward with the design, submitting to planning commission if necessary, and then ultimately bringing back contracts for you to authorize the city to move forward with the actual construction. So this won't be the last time you hear about this, and this piece of legislation importantly doesn't authorize those other items to be built. Those will come back to council for your approval.
Thank you for the clarification. Any other questions for Mrs. Moore or Mr. Vazana or anyone else? All right. Thank you, council. Ordinance 10, 2023 is an ordinance to authorize the mayor during the calendar year of 2023 to utilize joint and cooperative purchasing programs pursuant to the laws of the state of Ohio. This is being asked to be passed on an emergency so the city can take advantage of the best pricing in all programs. Mr. Vazana, is there anything you'd like to add regarding this? Just some of our
Sure.
bid processes.
Yeah, that's correct. This is a little bit of housekeeping. What I like to do, and in the past, we have at times individually authorized the participation with, I'd say the most notable is the DAS, like the state term schedule. But as a little refresher, the revised code permits political subdivisions to participate in joint cooperative purchasing programs. What I like to do is have the council at the beginning of the year set forth the list of those that they authorize the city to use. And again, like before, this right here isn't authorizing any specific purchase. It's just permitting staff to go use these joint cooperative purchasing groups to seek bids for projects that they may use in the future. So in the past, we've kind of done them on a one-off basis by individual pieces of legislation. This sets forth that authority. And as I said, it's done pursuant to Section 9.48 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Wonderful. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Vazana regarding this? All right. Moving along. That concludes legislation. We're on miscellaneous. Council, does anyone have any miscellaneous items to discuss during the caucus? Anyone? All right. Mr. Vazana, Mr. Mayor, do we want to reconvene? All right, so at this time, I'd like to make a motion to reconvene into an executive session.
I would ask that you state the purposes, so if I may jump in.
Please.
So the purposes are to consider the compensation of a public employee and to review negotiations with public employees concerning the compensation, terms, and conditions of their employment.
All right, so there is a motion on the floor as amended by Mr. Vazana to move into an executive session.
I'll second.
Mr. Fury seconds. Any discussion? This time I'd like to call the roll. Shannon?
Mr. Barr?
Yes.
Mr. Fury?
Yes.
Mrs. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Post?
Yes.
Mrs. Labby? Yes. Mr. Deeds?
Yes.
All right, at this time, we're going to move into an executive session. We'll reconvene shortly.